In just 5 minutes, everything changed. A single signature in a dimly lit chamber inside Clarence House triggered a seismic shift. The Crown Estate, once the immovable pillar of the monarchy, was suddenly no longer in royal hands. Whispers of a secretive financial agreement began to swirl. Who authorized it? Who benefits? And why now? Before we go deeper into what this really means for the royal family, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss a single update. The initial bulletin broke across news networks like a thunderclap. His Majesty has authorized a private transfer of undisclosed crown holdings, it read in dry legal language. But the implications ignited a firestorm behind palace walls. No aides were present, no legal counsel reportedly briefed. It was a lone signature applied in silence, in a room long associated with ceremonial grace, not backdoor deals. And yet, in the eyes of insiders, the king had just shifted centuries of royal tradition with the stroke of a pen. Inside Buckingham, confusion reigned. Senior courtiers, many of whom had served under Elizabeth II's reign with rigid protocol, were blindsided. The phones rang unanswered. Whispered meetings gathered in corridors. One senior aide was heard exclaiming in disbelief, "He did what?" It wasn't just the scale of the decision, it was the secrecy. Charles had circumvented the usual machinery of royal process. No Privy Council advisories, no prime ministerial briefings, just a decision made in complete isolation, shielded even from those who had sworn lifelong loyalty. But what had he truly signed? The Crown Estate has always occupied a legally murky realm, a vast empire of property technically owned by the monarch, yet governed in trust for the people. Palaces, coastal lands, heritage sites, and commercial real estate were suddenly under question. Would this transfer mean Charles now held these personally, or had they moved somewhere else entirely? Legal scholars raced to interpret the ambiguity, their voices growing louder as questions outpaced answers. As the fog of confusion thickened, murmurs of a hidden clause began to emerge. Whispers spoke of an obscure condition buried deep within the transfer, a clause that could potentially reposition the Crown Estate under a new stewardship model. This was no mere update to royal administration. This hinted at a reshuffling of power, possibly away from royal blood altogether. The scale of such a revelation was enough to send Parliament aides into private huddles. Journalists, legal analysts, and royal commentators all clawed at scraps of information. Yet the truth remained locked behind velvet doors. And so, the monarchy found itself in a state of suspended animation, centuries of tradition, held hostage by one enigmatic decision. The sense of unraveling wasn't just financial. It was emotional, foundational. If the Crown's assets had been moved, what else had been quietly dismantled behind closed doors? As the palace scrambled for answers, one question haunted every corridor: who now truly controls the British monarchy's ancient wealth? The Crown Estate, valued at over £15 billion, has stood as a sovereign stronghold for centuries, but overnight, its ownership began slipping through unseen fingers. Lawyers, offshore consultants, and sealed envelopes. Was this a royal restructuring or a masterful sleight of hand? For generations, the Crown Estate represented more than wealth. It symbolized endurance, control, and a delicate balance between monarchy and nation. It included vast stretches of prime land, some urban, some rural, but all laced with history. Buckingham Palace, Sandringham, Balmoral, each not only a royal residence, but a repository of political weight and cultural memory. Coastal estates, high-yield commercial buildings in central London, forests and wind farms that fueled the public treasury, all technically owned by the Crown but managed for the nation. And therein lies the legal paradox: ownership in name, governance by statute, benefit to both monarch and state until now. This was no public auction, no televised announcement of change. The shift began in the shadows. The document Charles signed didn't mention direct titles or deeds, it invoked trust law. A quietly established financial structure, registered offshore and directed through a series of staggered trusts, now stood between the Crown Estate and its historically assumed custodians. To most, the estate remained unchanged on paper. But beneath the surface, the control had quietly moved, not away from the monarchy necessarily, but away from the mechanisms that once kept it answerable. The fingerprints on this transaction were not British. Sources close to the investigation uncovered the involvement of financial consultants with deep links to jurisdictions known for discretion. Advisories from Luxembourg, Singapore, and the Cayman Islands had reportedly advised on the formation of layered corporate shields. These consultants didn't walk through the front doors of royal offices. They were flown in discreetly, vetted through private security channels, and signed non-disclosure agreements so binding they threatened ruin if breached. Their purpose? Not management, not strategy. Protection. Further digging exposed a web of shell companies, limited liability corporations with cryptic names, each linked to parcels of royal land. Some to properties long presumed publicly managed, others tied to forgotten ruins with ancestral ties. These LLCs weren't registered in the UK but in offshore havens, some designed to obscure their true beneficiaries. The architecture was deliberate, sophisticated enough to pass through regulatory eyes undetected, yet secure enough to lock out even Parliament scrutiny. Public records still reflected royal possession, but financial instruments told a different story, one that obscured responsibility while preserving benefit. When financial reporters attempted to trace the movement of assets, they were met with a dead end. Nothing concrete showed up in the usual disclosures. No deviation in royal grants. No red flags in sovereign spending. But the estate's income, often turned over to the treasury, showed subtle signs of diversion, microscopic at first, then measurable. And yet, no one could definitively link the change to Charles. It was the perfect ghost transaction, undetectable, irreversible, and possibly unstoppable. But to understand this secretive transaction, we must peel back the layers and look into the king's most trusted circle. As news leaks spread, attention turned to Charles's most loyal confidants. Were they protectors of the monarchy or co-authors of its greatest financial gamble? Behind palace walls, betrayals were whispered, and trust began to fracture. Inside the palace, the silence became heavier than the scandal. In the hours following the leak, every glance, every hushed voice, every unopened door began to feel like a test of loyalty. There was no press conference, no official denial. Instead, what unfolded was a desperate hunt not for truth, but for the origin of silence. Who had stood beside Charles in those final hours before the pen met the paper? Who had watched him change the course of royal ownership while the rest of the family remained in the dark? And more importantly, who had enabled it? Queen Camilla's absence from the key discussions raised immediate suspicion. Those close to the palace claimed she had been notified after, but others quietly questioned whether her exclusion was deliberate. 8. Some whispered she'd advised against the maneuver. Others suggested it was a move to protect her from fallout. Either way, her silence spoke louder than denial. As one court insider put it, if Camilla had been in that room, it would never have happened this way. The fact that she wasn't changed everything. But Charles was not alone. A name emerged from the shadows, a man known within elite financial circles only as the architect. No official titles, no public photos. But whispered reverence followed him, as did fear. He wasn't royal staff in the traditional sense. He operated from a private office, shielded by layers of legal intermediaries. His influence was quiet but absolute. Documents suggested that months before the agreement was signed, he had already begun building the framework to carry out the transfer. His loyalty, some said, lay not with the crown as an institution, but with the legacy of Charles as an individual. Princess Anne was reportedly blindsided and furious. Loyal, steadfast, and uncompromising, she had built her royal life on duty over drama. But this private shift of control felt like a betrayal not just of process, but of principle. Her outrage was not just personal, it was institutional. It is said she confronted the king directly, demanding an explanation he refused to give in full. For a woman who had never flinched in war zones or diplomatic standoffs, this was perhaps the first time she felt truly shut out of the monarchy she had helped sustain. Even more unsettling were reports of private phone calls between Charles and William, conversations meant to be confidential, now dissected by aides who overheard too much. One aide described the tone of the king's voice as unapologetically resolute. William, reportedly stunned, asked repeatedly why he hadn't been consulted. Charles answered only once, Some burdens must remain mine alone. That answer did little to calm the growing unease. The heir was left adrift, watching his future shift without his consent. And then, as the internal chaos grew too loud to contain, a palace aide quietly resigned. No public explanation, no farewell statements. Just a sealed envelope left on a mahogany desk with one line scrawled across the top. This was never part of the duty I swore to uphold. Her departure, though small in gesture, sent shockwaves through a staff already frayed at the edges. For a royal family that prided itself on discretion, the mask was beginning to slip. But this was more than palace intrigue. It was a strategy rooted in something far older than money, legacy, a hidden document buried in Windsor archives. A pact forged decades ago by George VI, and now King Charles, driven by private letters and ancient mandates, moved to protect what he believes is his final duty no matter the cost. Long before the ink dried on Charles's controversial transfer, whispers of an ancestral safeguard had circulated through the royal corridors, an elusive parchment rumoured to contain the legacy intentions of George VI himself. Unearthed during a quiet reorganisation of Windsor's restricted archives, this document, a handwritten charter never publicly acknowledged, appeared to outline a constitutional concept known only to a select few, the three-generation transfer principle. Historians within the palace, poring over the delicate script and archaic phrasing, were stunned. The document didn't just speak of property. It spoke of guardianship, of timing, of intergenerational duty beyond government reach. And at its core, one chilling clause in periods of extreme national transition. The sovereign may direct the reallocation of royal lands to shield the integrity of the crown, without parliamentary interference. To outsiders, this might have seemed symbolic, ceremonial. But to Charles, deeply spiritual, burdened by the weight of his role, it was an awakening. He interpreted the mandate not as an opportunity for power, but as a sacred call to act while he still held the throne. He saw, in the moment, a test, a chance to fulfill a prophecy whispered across decades, one his mother had reportedly refused to touch, and one only he would dare to embrace. The financial sleight of hand was not a ploy, it was, in his mind, an obligation written in blood and history. But it wasn't just an ancient royal directive that shaped his path. Somewhere among Diana's personal effects, reportedly passed to Charles by William in a rare moment of reconciliation, was a note. Faded ink, few words. But its impact echoed across time. They must be protected from what took us down. Whether she meant the institution or the relentless public machinery that fed on it remains unclear. But Charles, already weathered by a lifetime of scrutiny, took it as a message. Not for him, but for the children who would inherit what he could no longer carry. George, Charlotte, Louis. They were still young, but already in the world's spotlight. The monarchy that once sheltered its heirs behind iron gates now raised them on social media, televised outings and relentless headlines. Charles had seen too much of what exposure does to royalty, unprepared. This decision, the trusts, the secrecy, the sudden transfer was, in his view, not an act of concealment, but of protection. A quiet fortification of legacy, designed not for himself, but for those too young to resist the forces waiting to shape their futures. Some might call it a betrayal of public trust, others a noble sacrifice. But for Charles it was neither. It was something far older, a spiritual guardianship, a royal vow, one man standing between history and what comes next, making a choice that no one else dared to make. But, just as Charles sought to protect the future, he may have ignited a battle that could tear the family apart. Behind closed doors, William stared at the signed agreement, speechless. This wasn't the transition he envisioned. Now caught between loyalty to his father and duty to the nation, the Prince of Wales began drafting a response that would never see the light of day, or so he thought. The moment the news reached him, William felt the ground shift beneath him, not with rage, not even with betrayal, but with a hollow stillness, like the moment just before a storm breaks. He had spent his entire adult life preparing to serve under a constitutional monarchy grounded in transparency, integrity, and public trust. But the revelation that Charles had unilaterally transferred control of the Crown estate without consultation, without warning, left him wrestling with something far more corrosive than confusion: doubt. And in a monarchy built on unity and image, doubt is the beginning of collapse. He turned first to Catherine, always his sounding board, always his compass. Their messages were frantic, hushed, laced with disbelief. "Why didn't he tell us?" he asked her. She responded with quiet restraint, because he didn't want permission. William worried not just about the royal family, but about the people. How would the public see him? As a complicit shadow behind his father's maneuvering? Or as a silent heir afraid to speak? For William, silence wasn't safety, it was surrender. The very future of the monarchy now looked tainted, not by scandal, but by secrecy. In the quiet of his private office, he considered an unthinkable path. He reached for a copy of the Regency Act, the legal mechanism to temporarily remove a monarch deemed unfit to reign. His hands trembled as he read the provisions, knowing full well the magnitude of what it suggested. It wasn't anger that drew him there, it was fear. Fear that his father's vision, shaped by secrecy and spiritual symbolism, had drifted too far from reality. But Catherine stopped him. "You're not here to take his place," she told him. "You're here to preserve what will be yours. Stand still, not step back." Her words didn't soothe him. They haunted him. Still, the pressure grew. William drafted a letter to the Prime Minister, pointed, restrained, yet unmistakably clear in its concern. It was never meant to be sent. It was an exhale, a release of the weight that had built inside him since the first whisper of the deal. He tore it up just minutes after writing it. But in the world of royalty, nothing disappears. The contents of the letter, through an unknown leak, found their way into the hands of a parliamentary aide and from there to the press. The leak was partial but potent. Words like destabilizing, unilateral control, and deep constitutional unease became headlines across the nation. William had not spoken publicly, but his silence was now louder than ever, and as pressure mounted around the heir apparent, eyes turned sharply toward another royal figure, one who had been kept out of every conversation, who had been neither warned nor briefed, and who would not take this lightly. Yet even William's silent fury would be eclipsed by the reaction of someone long kept out of the loop: Camilla. When Queen Camilla finally learned of the transfer, she didn't whisper, she stormed. Sources claim her voice echoed through Buckingham's walls. She issued an ultimatum: reverse the deal or risk losing more than royal harmony. She hadn't been briefed, not even hinted. The woman crowned alongside Charles, elevated from consort to co-sovereign in every ceremonial sense, was cast aside when it mattered most. Camilla had always been a survivor vilified by the press, hardened by scrutiny, and tempered by me. But this was betrayal in its purest form. She had stood by Charles through scandal and silence, only to be excluded from the single most seismic decision of his reign. As the reports reached her in fragments, foreign advisors, hidden trusts, undisclosed ownership transfers, her fury built into something palace aides hadn't witnessed before: open rebellion. In a moment that would forever fracture the image of royal unity, Camilla confronted Charles. "You made me queen," she is said to have told him, "not your shadow." Her voice, uncharacteristically raised, cut through the walls of private chambers like a blade. This wasn't about money, it was about power, about presence, about being erased from the equation of legacy. She saw with painful clarity what the others had begun to whisper: Catherine's increasing prominence in financial and ceremonial matters. And with the Crown Estate's quiet transfer, the future was no longer merely symbolic. It was strategic, and Camilla had been bypassed. Her fear wasn't unfounded. If Catherine, as future queen, began to manage royal property, then Camilla's influence would vanish, reduced to titles with no tether to real control. In the monarchy, symbolism matters. But in private, power is built on who holds the deeds, the signatures, the leverage. Camilla's position was now tenuous, her footing cracked beneath the surface of palace protocol. She didn't hesitate. Within hours of the confrontation, she made it known she would not stay silent. If pushed further, she would speak to the press not through whispers, but through formal sit-downs, unfiltered and unmistakably public. But the palace, long trained in managing public narrative, underestimated Camilla's resolve. She reached out to select editors, individuals she had cultivated over years. But instead of stifling the leaks, the attempt only raised more suspicion. Stories of conflict began circulating in hushed tones across front pages. Anonymous quotes, strikingly direct, hinted at fractures the royal household had tried desperately to conceal. And in the shadows of Parliament, rumours emerged that Camilla had begun calling in favours former political allies, society figures, those still loyal to the image she'd fought to build after years in exile from public affection. She wasn't pleading, she was manoeuvring. This was no longer a disagreement between husband and wife, it was a struggle for survival in a monarchy on the edge of reinvention. Camilla, once an outsider turned insider, now found herself pushed back into the cold. And she wouldn't go quietly. The crown had been reshaped in silence, but now the noise was deafening. And as Camilla confronted Charles, another royal outsider re-emerged, one who saw opportunity in the chaos. Prince Harry had always walked in exile, but now he might hold a key. With knowledge of the crown's offshore assets and documents obtained during his exit, Harry prepared a message, one that could tilt the balance of royal power once again. He had left the institution, but he had not left empty-handed. During the frenzied disentanglement of his royal duties, Harry had been exposed to folders, briefings, and silent agreements, many of which he had neither requested nor fully understood at the time. But one file had stayed with him in memory. A thin portfolio marked with nondescript initials, containing financial pathways that stretched far beyond the UK's borders. At the time, it seemed like just another example of royal opacity. But now, in light of the Crown Estate's mysterious transfer, it looked like something else entirely. A blueprint. A map of what was possible, and what had likely already happened. Meghan had sensed it long before he did. "This will come back around," she had told him during one late-night conversation in their Montecito home. "It always does." She wasn't speaking in revenge. She was speaking in patterns. Patterns she had watched unfold in boardrooms, in headlines, and now in palace halls. Harry didn't want to be drawn back into the cycle. But duty, in its strange and relentless form, has a way of summoning even those who no longer wear the crown. And this time, the stakes weren't titles. They were truths. His legal team in California began to explore the implications quietly. Some of the offshore transfers described in those old documents, if connected to the recent Crown Estate movement, could border on international violations, particularly if public funds were involved, even tangentially. There was no certainty, no clear breach, but the implications were enough to raise concern. Rather than make a statement, Harry chose a more surgical move. He reached out to a well-known UK investigative journalist, not with accusations, but with a phrase that sent a chill. "You may want to re-examine what I saw when I left. There's interest, not intent." It was not a threat. It was a signal. What followed was a quiet Zoom call between Harry and William, the first since the leak of William's private letter. It was brief, tense, silent in all the places that once overflowed with brotherhood. William's face reportedly remained frozen in thought as Harry asked one simple question: "Do you think this is what Mum wanted?" No answer came, just a nod, a slow, pained nod that said everything and nothing. The screen went dark. They hadn't reconciled, but they had, in that moment, recognized each other as sons caught in the aftershock of legacy. When word of Harry's inquiries reached Charles, his reaction was immediate. According to sources close to the king, he placed a personal call, no aides, no recordings. A father's voice, not a monarch's. "Stay out for everyone's sake," he pleaded. But the request was too late. The story had already begun unraveling, and Harry, for better or worse, was once again a player, in a game he never asked to join. But even as the past threatened to rise, it was Parliament's next move that shocked them all. Suddenly, whispers from Westminster. Parliament announced an emergency inquiry, but was it genuine scrutiny or a well-crafted illusion? With monarchical immunity clashing with public outcry, the system began to tremble. And not everyone inside Parliament wanted the truth exposed. The headlines were relentless. Crown estate in crisis, royal finances under fire, constitutional unrest brewing behind palace gates. What had begun as a concealed financial maneuver had erupted into a national spectacle. The public, stirred by leaks and whispers, demanded clarity. The media refused to relent. Under mounting pressure, Parliament acted or appeared to. An emergency committee was swiftly assembled, its stated purpose to determine the legality, implications, and transparency of the Crown estate transfer. But when the list of participants was released, the omissions screamed louder than the names included. Not a single independent financial auditor, no constitutional experts, only hand-picked MPs, many with long-standing affiliations to the monarchy. It was an investigation by design, not by necessity. The House of Commons fractured overnight. Debates turned venomous. One side demanded the protection of an ancient institution they believed under siege. The other called it out plainly. This was not preservation, it was concealment. One MP, known for her sharp tongue, declared openly in session, "If we silence ourselves now, we surrender not just oversight but our very claim to democracy." Others fired back, warning against destabilizing the monarchy in times of international uncertainty. The chamber didn't just echo wit. Policy. It boiled with fear, calculation, and quiet deals behind closed doors. Then came the proposal that cracked the facade, entirely a motion to revisit and redefine the Crown Estate Act. The very idea that the legislative body might reassert ownership or limit sovereign discretion sent a jolt through the aristocracy. Outrage followed. Leaks surfaced revealing covert lobbying from royal-aligned lords who had met with committee members in private dinners, urging them to let the storm pass. What looked like an inquiry was quickly morphing into a controlled demolition of the truth. What mattered now wasn't whether something unlawful had happened, but whether anyone had the courage to uncover it. And still, while the politicians fought their war of narratives, a quiet transformation unfolded within Kensington. Catherine, calm yet watchful, was briefed daily by her senior advisers. While Charles faced Parliament and Camilla stirred the press, she remained silent but not inactive. Her advisers warned her, this was not merely a political matter, it was a prelude. Something bigger was coming. The balance of the monarchy, they told her, was shifting. "Prepare for what's next," one of them said, "because what comes next may be yours to carry." And then came the final twist, one last letter, one last document, and a decision from Charles that none of them saw coming. As the nation held its breath, a sealed envelope arrived at Downing Street. Inside, King Charles's final declaration, the truth, the terms, and a quiet acknowledgement that the monarchy may never look the same again. But what he gave up, and what he kept, remained shrouded in royal mist. The letter was written in Charles's own hand. No printed statement, no official seal, just paper, ink, and the unmistakable imprint of a monarch who had chosen, at last, to speak with clarity. In it, he explained what no one had been able to confirm, until now. The transfer of the Crown estate was not an abdication of responsibility, but a calculated step toward decentralization. A shift not away from duty, but away from the rigidity that had choked the institution in modern times. To protect the Crown, he wrote, one must sometimes let go of its walls. It wasn't a confession, it was a philosophy, one rooted in quiet defiance and reluctant evolution. But what startled the establishment, even more than the letter's tone, was its content. Charles announced that the stewardship of key royal assets would now be managed by an independent board of trustees. At the helm, Princess Catherine, not in name alone but in legal authority. She was tasked not with ownership but guardianship, a protector of legacy and a modernizer of its reach. It was a move that sent shockwaves through the palace and Parliament alike. For in a single stroke, Charles had defined the future, bypassing expectation and elevating the one figure who had remained unwavering in silence through the storm. Buckingham Palace released its own statement soon after. Carefully worded, sparse, but unmistakably loaded, it confirmed a partial divestment of estate control, designed to enhance the monarchy's resilience in the 21st century. For some, it was a soft retreat. For others, a masterstroke. The crown would remain, but its perimeter had shifted, and so had its heart. Charles, now bearing the title of king, would assume what he termed a transitional observance role, not stepping down but stepping aside, still sovereign, still present. But no longer the architect of its inner workings, Camilla, who had thundered against the silence, refused to comment. For now, her office added ominously, and perhaps that was the truest reflection of where things stood, not resolved, merely paused, not mended, but managed. And in that gap, Catherine E. merged. Her first public appearance after the announcement was understated, but unmistakably symbolic. Flanked by senior advisors, eyes steady, expression unreadable, she walked not as a wife, not even as a princess, but as a leader now carrying a responsibility that had been quietly handed to her by the very man who once bore it alone. And with one final bow to the past, the monarchy didn't fall, it transformed. But what rises in its place may not be royal at all. Thanks for watching. Please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we will see you in next one.